wind howled through the empty plains as a lone carriage rolled into the small town of Dusthaven. Inside sat a woman with trembling hands, clutching a crumpled letter that read only, "Come to Red River Ranch, C. Maddox." Her name was Evelyn, and she had spent the last 3 years working at a women's shelter after her family disowned her. No dowry, no beauty that poets would sing about, just a scar near her cheek and a heart too used to being broken. The mail-order bride program had been her last chance, and this letter, her last hope. When she stepped down from the carriage, eyes turned. Dusthaven wasn't used to seeing new faces, especially not one wearing a dress faded from too many washings. Evelyn's hat was too large, her gloves patched, and her suitcase, small enough to hold the sum of her life. A group of men leaned against the saloon railing, whispering. "That's her? The Maddox bride?" one said. He must be desperate. Then came Caleb Maddox, the cowboy everyone respected, a man who spoke little but worked harder than anyone for miles, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, and steady-eyed. He stood beside his horse with quiet curiosity as Evelyn approached. Her heart thumped like thunder in her chest. "Mr. Maddox," she said softly, "I'm not the pretty one you ordered." She tried to smile, but the words burned. The letter she'd read in secret from the matchmaker described the kind of woman he'd wanted, a gentle lady with a kind face and sweet manner. Evelyn had none of that, or so she believed. Caleb tilted his head, studying her for a moment. The air hung heavy, thick with dust and judgment. Then slowly he smiled, small at first but real. "Ma'am," he said, stepping closer, "I reckon you're all I needed." The crowd hushed. Evelyn blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Caleb took her suitcase and nodded toward the horizon where the Red River Ranch stretched in golden light. "Let's go home." That simple word, home, cracked something inside her chest. The ride to the ranch was silent except for the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves. Evelyn watched the sunset paint the sky and thought of every door that had ever closed on her. Caleb glanced her way now and then, his expression unreadable. When they arrived, the place was nothing short of breathtaking. Acres of open land, horses grazing freely, and a small wooden house that seemed to glow in the fading sun. That night, as they sat by the fire, Caleb poured her coffee. "You don't talk much," he said. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Talking hasn't ever done me much good." He looked into the flames. "Maybe it's time it does." Outside, a storm rolled over the plains. The windows rattled, and Evelyn jumped as thunder cracked. Caleb moved to steady the shutters. But when lightning flashed, she saw the outline of a man standing near the barn, someone watching them. Caleb caught it too, his hand drifting toward his gun. "Stay inside," he ordered quietly. Evelyn's pulse raced. She watched from the window as he disappeared into the dark, the rain soaking his hat and coat. Minutes felt like hours until the door finally creaked open again. Caleb returned, drenched but calm. "Just an old drifter," he said, though his jaw tightened. "Looking for shelter." Evelyn exhaled shakily. Something about the way he said it made her realize even a cowboy with a strong heart had his storms to fight. That night, as the rain fell, Evelyn lay awake thinking about the word shelter. She had come from one, but maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found a better one. A shelter made not of walls, but of kindness. And a man who saw her not as a scarred face, but as a soul worth keeping. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows like a promise. Evelyn stood on the porch, watching Caleb saddle his horse. He moved with quiet strength, his hands rough but gentle. "Heading to town?" she asked. He nodded. "Got supplies to fetch." "You'll be all right here?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "I've handled worse." When he rode off, she turned to the garden, determined to make herself useful. The earth was dry, the tools worn. Yet with every seed she planted, a strange peace settled over her. Maybe love wasn't about being chosen from a list. Maybe it was about showing up when no one else would. Hours later, dark clouds gathered again. Thunder rumbled as the same drifter Caleb had warned about returned. Only this time, he wasn't alone. 2 men followed, their faces rough with hunger and greed. "Where's the cowboy?" One sneered. Evelyn froze. "He's gone. Then this place is ours now." She ran inside, heart pounding, and grabbed the rifle hanging above the mantel. Her hands shook, but she remembered Caleb's words. "Maybe it's time your voice does some good." When the door burst open, she fired a warning shot. The blast echoed across the valley. The men ducked, startled. But before they could recover, The sound of galloping hooves filled the air. Caleb returned, his horse kicking up mud as he leapt down and charged forward. A single warning shout from him was enough. The drifters ran, disappearing into the storm. When it was over, Caleb turned to her, eyes wide in both shock and admiration. "You could have been killed," he said. Evelyn, trembling, replied, "You said this was home. I wasn't letting anyone take it." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his hat. "You're not the pretty one they'd write songs about," he whispered. "But you've got more courage than all of them combined." She smiled through tears. "Guess you didn't order courage either." Caleb chuckled softly. "No, but I'm glad it came anyway." The days that followed changed them both. Evelyn laughed more. Caleb talked more. The ranch seemed warmer, the sunsets brighter. He'd watch her feeding the horses and think how wrong he'd been to ask for a gentle lady. What he'd needed was her, strong, scarred, and beautifully real. One evening, as the wind carried the scent of rain, Caleb reached into his pocket and handed her the letter she'd brought. "You can burn it now," he said. "Don't need words to tell me who you are." She threw it into the fire, watching it curl into ash, the last trace of who she used to be. When she turned back, Caleb took her hand, voice low and sure. "Evelyn Maddox, you weren't the bride I ordered, but you're the woman I prayed for." The screen fades as the two stand beneath the open sky. The storm behind them, the sun breaking through.